Hi everybody, this is Bastiaan and this is the annotation of a game I played against the ProDeo chess engine. So veteran chess players might recognize ProDeo as the Rebel engine, which was developed in 1980s. Became world computer champion in 1992 and was the first commercial chess software to beat Grandmaster Arthur Yusupov in 1997. And later Anand, who was rated number 2 in the world in 1998 in a series of games. And Rebel did that on a 450 MHz AMD computer, which are hardware specs I can find in my cell phone nowadays. In 2004, the CEO of Rebel retired and made a free version of Rebel available called ProDeo, which means for free. It's rated above 2700 ELO, and it is said that ProDeo or Rebel is one of the most human-like software engines. Now, I owned Rebel back under Windows 98 several years ago, and back then I wasn't as much into computer chess as I am now, and I was never even able to beat it in the games I played against it. So in a way, this is a payback match. Another thing about the ProDeo engine is that it's very resource sensitive. So if you compare it with my game against the Chesterfield engine with the Catherine Gambit, you might see the screen turn black in the last few seconds, and that's because the engine requires so many resources that it takes away for the recording device and made the screen turn black. And with Rodeo it's the other way around, and it's so sensitive about resources that actually when I record games it plays much worse, because recording software takes up too many resources, and that's why I played using 12-second move intervals instead of the usual 9 seconds, and just to keep an honest game and honest comparison with the other engines I posted. So it results in a 20-minute game, but with my upgraded YouTube account I was able to post it in one video. So now let's continue with the game. I'm white and I start with f3. Black plays e5 and I play e4. So this is called the king's head variation, and black plays e5 to free up his queen and to immediately, in some cases, attack the exposed white king on e1. Now, the king's head variation is an obscure opening, but it's not as bad as it seems. Of course, the drawbacks are the open diagonal. Drawback is white not taking control of the center, and the advantages are support of the e4 pawn, and basically creating obscure lines with unknown complications. So this opening hasn't been studied very much at all, but it leads to complex tactical shots, and we will see that I beat the engine in the opening itself because of the situations that arise. And black continues with bishop to c5. Now bishop to c5 does two things. It threatens to exchange off the knight on g1, which will be needed in the defense because of my weakened king side. Also, it prevents white from taking control of the center with d4. So typically we develop knights before bishops unless we have a good reason to, and black now has a good reason to develop. So I can either choose to save the knight by playing knight to e2, keeping the knight as a defender for the queen h4 check, which may be the best move, or I can ignore the threat. So I choose to ignore the threat and I play c3. Point of c3 in the spirit of the king's head is a supporting move to later play d4. So now black has to make a choice, and he's basically forced to trade off the knight, because if he doesn't, d4 will kick back the bishop and make him lose time. So black just continues with bishop takes knight. And I recapture. But with the defender down, my position is becoming more and more compromised. Black now plays queen h4 check and gets in a free attack on the h2 pawn, winning a pawn. g3 is forced. Well, king e2 is also possible, but that's even worse. And queen takes pawn. Again, white must waste time. Rook to g2. And black continues with queen to h1. Trapping the knight, the bishop on f1. So it seems that white is in a horrible position already. His king side is too exposed. Pawns are already getting overextended. Pinned bishop. And down a pawn. So white has no hopes to trap black's queen either, because if I were to try with, say, queen to e2 to support rook to h2 to prevent the queen from escaping, and let's say black just waits the move with a6, and I try to play queen to h2, black can simply get out with queen to g1, and if white tries to block with rook to f2, white's defense just falls apart. So white shouldn't even try to trap the queen, because it's not possible. So king to f2 instead is played, providing support for all the surrounding pieces and getting out of the pin and activating the bishop in some cases. Black plays knight to c6. Now this looks like a normal developing move, but actually knight to c6 has a very specific purpose. For instance, the idea of black is to attack the rook on g2, but if black plays d6, then white can simply play bishop to b5 check and win the queen. So that's why knight to c6 is played, in order to block that diagonal. So black blocks the diagonal, will move his pawn, and then play bishop to h3. So I continue with my plan, taking control of the center with d4 with the support of the c pawn. Black plays d6, freeing up the bishop, and I play d5. Now I'm threatening the knight, but it doesn't matter if there's a knight or a pawn on c6, as long as the diagonal with the check is blocked to prevent the discovered attack on the queen, because I need to play a check in order to gain the tempo, to gain the queen. Otherwise it's black who will gain white's queen. So black just has to keep c6 covered. So black doesn't move the knight and instead plays bishop to h3. So I take on the knight. Black takes the rook, so I've lost the exchange. Pawn takes pawn, so I'm threatening the rook with promotion to a queen and check. So black blocks, and it looks like I didn't get much out of this tactic, because if bishop b5 check now, which was played, the bishop on g2 is still protecting the queen, and I'm still down the exchange. But after king to e7, we get queen takes queen and bishop recaptures, so I'm still down an exchange. But now the idea is becoming clear. The bishop is stuck and trapped on h1, and black has lost in the opening. Now I will need to move minor pieces in order to activate the rook. That's just a matter of time. First things first, bishop to a6, secure the pawn. Bishop to c6 is possible as well, but this allows only 2 squares for white. So it's not yet certain how we'll play, so I prefer to give the bishop as much space as possible. Knight to f6, bishop g5, exchanging pieces and activating the rook. h6, take, knight to d2, and black grabs a pawn for the bishop, or capture with the king. Rook b to d8, bishop b5. So since the rook is no longer attacking the pawn, I can activate my bishop again. But black retreats and plays rook to b8. So I do the same, hoping for another move. But black still plays rook to d8. Bishop to b8 again, gaining another 10 seconds to assess the position. Rook to b8. And now I refuse to play bishop to a6 to prevent draw by threefold repetition. And bishop to c6. And bishop to c6 now has a solid purpose. Now the king cannot approach the bishop or the pawn because d5, d7 and c8 are covered. Bishop is protecting the pawn, but it's also blocking the c7 pawn. So I'm securing the threat with the pawn promotion on b7, and there's nothing that black can immediately do to prevent that. You'll need to keep a rook on the 8th rank. So black continues with h5, b4. So I need to get my pawns across to force one pawn through and get a promotion, maybe even at the cost of sacrificing a minor piece. h4, take, rook to the open file, f5. But there's no need to capture the pawn, although engines feel that's best, because and there's enough protection. So I decline to capture the pawn and play a4 instead, a move which most engines don't like at all. Rook h3 check, rook blocks. Again, I'm willing to exchange pieces. Rook takes, king recaptures, pawn takes pawn, and I choose to recapture with the knight. f5, so the knight retreats. Rook h8, c4, continuing the pawn advance. King e6, providing more support for his advancing pawns. Knight to b3, redeveloping my knight to do the same thing. King e7. Now the problem is that black doesn't have any moves left, because his only piece, which is a rook, is forced to cover the 8th rank, and he can't use his king to do it, because once again there's no way for the king to approach the position. So both king and rook are less active now compared to my pieces. I can take my time to advance my pawns and eventually break through. c5. Now, if pawn takes pawn, knight can recapture, followed by knight to a6, and pawn promotion. So if king to d6 to threaten the bishop, I shouldn't play knight to a6 and sacrifice the bishop, because if king takes bishop, I promote, take. I had a feeling that this would be a draw, because black has 4 pawns against 2, and analysis have proven me right. This is actually a draw. So this is the idea behind it, but you can't do it right away. First we have to retreat the bishop, and once again the king is unable to approach the position. He can only retreat to e7. So if king to e7, then knight to a6, with the same conclusion, but white is still up the bishop, and that will be enough to secure the win. However, this wasn't played, so black doesn't play pawn take pawn. He chooses to advance the pawn with pawn to d5, and this forces black to keep his king on e6 to cover d5 pawn that is under attack by the bishop, and this will prove to be important later on. So black has reduced mobility of his king even more. a5, and now we're seeing a very odd position with 6 pawns in a row, also 3 pawns in a row on the 7th rank. And it's important to notice that all these pawn rows are on the black side of the board, meaning I will be closer to advantage, to promotion. f4 check, king g4 check, king to f3, rook to f8, p6. So I'm threatening, of course, pawn takes pawn on a7 with promotion. Now keep in mind that this type of Maroczy bind is difficult to crack, because advancing the a5 pawn is useless, because it simply gets blocked. Advancing the c6 pawn, if possible, useless because it gets blocked. So the breakthrough has to come from the b file, b6, and it's possible that I have to sacrifice a piece to get through. So pawn takes, same threat, e4 check, so black gets the spy check in, king f2, And now, of course, black cannot recapture, because if pawn takes pawn, a6 will promote. All the other option is to block by playing a6. And normally this would have been enough, because the rook can cover b8 and the other pawn can block a5. But remember, this king was stuck on e6, protecting this pawn, and there was no other way but for black to advance this a6 pawn. So now we get a fork, gaining the a6 pawn, king d6. Now I'm sacrificing the bishop for a pawn and getting ready to promote. So black takes, I promote, rook takes queen, knight takes rook check, king to b7, and the knight retreats to d7. And the pawns on the a and b file are self-sustaining. So king a6, but black cannot attack the a5 pawn, because then he cannot stop the b pawn from promoting. Knight f6, attacking the d5 pawn or the a4 pawn if the d pawn moves. And black will lose his remaining pawns. d4, so I take the central pawn. Now the knight will cover d2, and the king will take on the pawn on f4. d3, king f3, d2, take, king to b7, take. And now it's a matter of getting the king across and guide the pawn through. Black takes a pawn, and out of desperation, and now the b pawn can promote safely. Queen, getting the knight out of the way, and then a simple king and queen check will finish the game. So that was my game against the ProDeo engine, using an obscure opening called the King's Head variation. And I hope you enjoyed watching it, and please leave a comment on YouTube and have a good evening.